Brian Endless, who clearly is a master of technology and knows when his microphone is hot, and should be doing a radio show here at WCPT, teaches at Loyola University of Chicago. We have chatted before, but not for a while. First of all, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. Happy New Year, and thanks for having me back on.
It is my pleasure. I wanted to talk to you about this new project that you are putting together, the Come Together Project. Tell us about it.
And I thank you for it. This is something that started to strike me the first time Donald Trump was elected. And unlike a lot of my friends who, saw the political negatives, one of the things that really hit me was how much we got to hate each other in this country and how much we were canceling our friends, canceling our families. And that really resonated with me. I teach a class on capitalism and talked about some of these things in it. And one of the things that I realized is that we are fighting with each other for no good reason, especially on things like culture war issues. I think there are a small group of people who are pushing us to fight, pushing us to cancel each other, pushing us to fear each other, and we can do something about that. And I think that's a big part of the battle, as we have seen with this most recent election. The country's going in very different directions. I think there are a lot of people hurting. I think we have to bring everybody together on what we now call the left and the right in order to stop this fighting and make some real progress in the country.
I would like your advice. This isn't about, posting on social media. This is real world, real life. There is someone in my life who seems like a very sweet, very kind person who I found out a month or so ago voted for Trump. Now, I don't think they're MAGA. It's just her explanation was, I've always been a Republican, so I vote Republican. And right. I understand that there are people who simply can't imagine crossing over to the other side for any portion of their ballot, let alone the entire ballot. But at first I thought, well, am I a hypocrite for not just turning my back on this person and saying, no, we're done, I can't believe it. And then I thought, well, maybe do I talk to this person? Like, I have a feeling, Brian, that there are a lot of people who voted for Trump, low information voters who either, they didn't like something Joe Biden did, or they thought somehow, there was this big bit of misinformation that the economy was so great under Trump, as he was telling people that left and right. And I think there were some people who thought their lives would be better. There are some people who've grown up in Republican households who really, it's like growing up, I guess, as an evangelical and then suddenly breaking away. It's, right. You're part of this tribe. But, do I ignore it, Brian? I want to ask her, okay, well, did you know? How do you feel about the fact that Elon Musk has been given all this power and all this information that, and that the first thing he wants to do is destroy the agency that supports people around the world when there's a famine or when there's an outbreak? I mean, do I just let it go? Do I just count on the fact that when her life finally starts being impinged upon, then suddenly she'll look at things a little differently? I don't know what to do. I don't know how to come together with this person, Brian.
Let me see if I can help a little bit, because I've been listening to people for over a year now as we're putting this thing together. And I can say talking with or listening. I try not to say talking to people, because I've been trying to really figure out what makes people like your friend tick. And why are we so different on these things? And what I've noticed is a couple things. First, I'll start with saying you're not strange or wrong for this. You're kind of being Jeffersonian with the idea of I try not to let politics get in the way of my friendships. And he said you'd never let politics get in the way. I think that's important for us. We've been trained since the 80s that we are two teams in this country. And this is a team sport, and it's a win-lose sport. And there's no way that we can both win. And I think there's some people profiting from that training, but it's not most of us. It's not you and I when we're doing it. What you see, though, when you have a friend like yours, my recommendation, and I've given this to a lot of people, and I've had several people try it out very successfully, is to try to take it upon yourself to listen to your friend. And it does sound like you've started to do that already. I think you've taken a step past what many people do. Instead of just canceling right out, instead of just arguing, you listen. When we go into these conversations and we see somebody that is wrong as far as we're concerned, we tend to want to fight instead of listen. I've done this with car drivers, cab drivers, and people that I meet. My friends are getting sick of it when they hear me do it on the street with random people. But I'm trying to figure out where people come from on these things. So I want to know why that person supports Trump. I want to get into their heads more. And it usually comes down to a few things. One is the reflex Republican, that they've just always been Republican, but that doesn't have to do it. There are things beyond that. The number one thing that I found is it's really is the economy. And we have two very different economies in this country. One that a few people, top 10%, are really taking advantage of, and it was really booming. And the other that's been getting worse for 40 years, with inflation going up and wages not going up, housing going up massively more than inflation, food going up massively more. And there are a lot of people in this country hurting. And I think what Trump actually did was he noticed them. He told them that he sees their problems. I don't think he gave them any solutions. I don't think he's going to give them any solutions. But people in the Democratic Party and others didn't notice them. They fought against them. And we spend a lot of time telling people how to think, and they tend to reject that. I'd also suggest one of the big things is your people like your friend, the vast majority of people who vote for Trump, don't listen to this radio station. Mm-hmm. They listen to other news sources. And a lot of us just can't get past the fact that how can my friend not understand this? How can this person who is supposed to be smart not see what she's doing to other people, not see that USAID helps people, not see what they're doing to people who are marginalized, to people of color, to all these different groups? How can they not see how these culture wars things are hurting? And the answer is because they don't, for most part, they don't have information that shows them that. They don't see things that way at all. When they hear the word immigrant, they see fear, and they have fear of people taking their jobs, even if that makes no sense whatsoever in practical terms. They have been fed a steady diet of fear, and leaders for time immemorial have known that convinces people, and that changes their rationality. So we tend to forget, your friend may be perfectly rational, but if she or he has different information than you do, they're going to see the world differently and make different decisions. I think the number one thing to personally come together with other people is to get past our desire to fight and move into a desire to understand each other.
Well, that's good advice. I like that. And it's what I was kind of hoping you'd say, because my plan, if I have the courage to talk about politics at all, is going to be kind of like, what do you think so far? What is it that this new administration is doing so far that you think is really great? I have a funny feeling for a lot of Trump voters, the answer is going to be, I haven't really been paying attention yet. Because I think there's a lot of people, forget about bad information, I think there's a lot of people who have little or no information at all when it comes to politics. I
want to make a different suggestion, though, Joan. I want to suggest you change the subject. And that while listening to your friend, look for things that you already agree on. So even just saying, what do you think about Trump? I think it can be a good open-ended question, but at the same time, they might feel defensive about that. What I go to instead is, how do you feel about healthcare insurance companies? How do you feel about what insurance companies are doing to people in denying coverage that we should have and in letting people die for a profit? How do you care about our healthcare system where we don't get our choices of doctors on things? If it's somebody with kids, how do you feel about child care and the fact that we can't afford child care, that we're in a system that, two people having jobs and we spend most of one of their jobs on child care? There are a whole bunch of subjects like that. Housing costs, treatment of veterans comes up. Opioids in states. I was in Ohio and opioids was a big topic. How we deal with those things are actually things we can agree on. And that's one of the premises that we have is we've got a giant landscape of things that most Americans can agree on and that most of us are massively affected by. But what we choose to focus on are the culture wars. And we're not going to win on those culture wars issues. I don't care what side you're on abortion or on DEI or anything else. When you get involved in a fight on that, you're probably going to lose, whichever side you're on. And you're going to lose because you're never going to agree on it. Nobody's ever going to get convinced. But what would happen if we start talking about the things that we all want and start to look at, hey, is this political party doing it? Because I don't think either political party is helping the vast majority of people. They're really just helping a few people at the top, and our economy's shown that for 40 years now.
One of the things that people always point to is that starting pretty much with Reagan, we started giving tax breaks to the rich to the point where we now have serious economic inequity. I mean, there's the very, very rich, and the middle class is a shadow of its former self, and then we have people who don't make very much money. Whenever that has happened in other countries, it has led to political instability. Do you think a winning message for Democrats going forward is, hey, here's an interesting idea. Let's tax the rich?
I'm not sure. I do think that taxation is incredibly important. One of the things I'm not sure about is I stopped being a Democrat under Clinton. And part of it was that I thought the party pulled too far toward the things that Reagan was doing in working with corporations. And nothing that's happened since that time has dissuaded me. I may like one party more than the other when it comes to my choices of who to vote for. That's clearly out there. But I don't think anybody in the current Democratic Party is going to fix it. Let's say you like Bernie's message or AOC's message or people like that. They're never going to be successful in the current political system that we have. They're going to be outliers in the current political system. I think rather this, to me, isn't something where we are trying to bring people together inside the political system. We're trying to make societal change. And I think bringing up Reagan is fantastic because, to me, a lot of it goes back to that. You mentioned taxes. Taxes under Eisenhower peaked at 88%, and we had a fantastic economy. Taxes when Reagan started were at 75%, and we strengthened the economy from that point. But I think what the 1980s brought in was a move toward individualism and a move toward greed. And that didn't exist in the same way before that point in time. You take Kennedy talking about community, talking about bringing us all together, sacrificing for the greater good, and that moved into the movie Wall Street, where greed is good. But we forget that was a joke. That was supposed to be bad.
Yeah.
That wasn't really the message.
Something that I want to talk about more. I've heard people say, in this idea of, we've sort of lost our sense of being able to communicate with people with different ideas. And that part of that is we've lost this sense of community. You know, that
Exactly.
people, there was a time when people were more involved in their communities, whether it was a volunteer group or some other, maybe they were involved with their local libraries. They were involved in their churches. They were involved in, craft groups where they would get together. That we seem to have lost that. We don't do clubs anymore,
Right, 100%.
And that has helped with the divisiveness, because it's when you're around a group of people who have disparate backgrounds and disparate interests, I think you become more tolerant of that and less in a silo.
That is 100% correct, and that is something that we're really pushing for. We want to move people back from individualism to community. And the more people I talk to, the more I realize this is a desire for people. While the 80s tried to teach us that we're all these greedy individuals, humanity is really a community animal. Human beings are community animals. We want that. We miss that when that's not there. We understand at a base level that makes our lives better. And I've gone out to a few communities. I'm going to do a lot more in the next year and talk to people. And that's one of the things that's really coming through. They're hungry for ways to get themselves back together. And a piece of it is people are afraid because they don't want to get drawn into uncomfortable discussions when they're there. So a first step for us is giving people tools to get past uncomfortable discussions. But then it's going to come down to building a movement that focuses on community and focuses not on profits and not on the things that only help a tiny number of people at the top who own the big corporations and own a lot of stocks, but look at the things that help all of us, and probably start at a local and state level before moving that to a national level. I started to say a little bit beforehand, one of the things that I really look at Reagan as just a genius, and it was the people after Reagan too, it was the contract with America in 1994, and a lot of the things that the Heritage Foundation and others have done behind the scenes. I may not like what they're doing, but the fact is they built a bench, and they built from the bottom up. They went into communities and got people elected to school boards and got people elected to local councils, and they set them up with messages. And we may hate book banning messages, the Moms for Liberty and other groups, but these groups didn't pop up out of nowhere. They have scripts that people have paid for. People like the Koch brothers have set up networks to create this stuff and to change our culture. And Reagan really set us on a course for a major change of culture. I think he had a social revolution in the 1980s, and I would suggest what we need is a social revolution to go back in the other direction to community.
Yeah. I want to ask you, I want you to put on your other hat for a second. I know that you, at Loyola University, you're the Director of African Studies and the African Diaspora, and I know you've been very involved in what's going on in the Great Lakes region of Africa, Rwanda specifically.
Absolutely.
Give us a summary of what we need to know about what's going on in that area, and are you concerned with this apparent Elon Musk move to completely eliminate USAID, completely shut it down, lock the doors, fire the folks who work there? Talk about both of those things, if you would. I
think you've got 2 hours. I'll try to put them into a few minutes each. You can decide how much you want to have me back later for these. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, gigantic country, half the size of the U.S., Rwanda's next door, and it's a postcard-sized country, the size of Vermont. But Rwanda is dominating politics in the Congo right now. There is a civil war that's been going on in the Congo since 1998, since shortly after the Rwandan genocide. That civil war has killed over 6 million people, and it is largely dominated by Rwandan influence in the region. The UN has reported on this. Human Rights Group has. The U.S. State Department knows it. Right now, over the past 3 months, that war has flared up again. And we have seen just in the last week 700 killed and hundreds of thousands turned into displaced people, as a group of quote-unquote rebels called M23 has taken over one of the largest cities in eastern Congo, Goma, and they have been actively backed by the Rwandan government. Everybody knows that, except Rwanda, they don't admit this. Everybody else understands that Rwanda funds this group. Rwanda gives them support and orders. In this case, Rwanda has also sent in about 4,000 troops to support the 8,000 troops that M23 has, and they have taken over a big city in that region. The only reason this is happening, Joan, is conflict minerals. There are coltan, cobalt, tantalite, tin in that region that are insanely valuable in manufacturing, and the rebel groups have been shipping those on the black market from Congo into Rwanda since '98 now, and this has caused millions of deaths along the way, and we know very little about it except occasionally when it flares up like this. I will say on USAID, and then I'll let you get back if you have questions on that. USAID is one of the main funders of aid around the world. Congo is one of the top 5 places we send money. Ukraine, Gaza are all places that USAID isn't just important, it's essential to the lives of the human beings who are there. We are typically the leader in providing aid. Others provide it too, but USAID has a fantastic logistical and support network, and without our aid, we're going to see a huge number of people starving and dying in these regions who could have been saved with just the tiny, tiny amount of money that USAID provides to them every year. So gutting that saves pretty much nothing for the budget in effective terms, but it massively hurts human beings in other countries. This is really just a form of cruelty to do this, and nobody in the U.S. really seems to understand how bad it's going to be.
No, that's absolutely for sure. And people forget that, yes, it's wonderful if there's a crisis somewhere in the world and we step in with aid. But that aid is also referred to in political circles as soft power. When you help somebody out like that, you have influence over their government. Maybe you can, encourage them to be more aligned with the West rather than going to China for what they need. Because China's making a big push in Africa. Hey, you need help? We've got money. Be our friend. Don't be their friend. Be our friend.
This is one of the things I hope the administration realizes about Congo, both Goma and USAID. China already has mining contracts with the Congolese, mostly for diamonds and potentially some uranium, and we are in a trade war there. China's building infrastructure. We've been making inroads and progress, but if we drop all of our support, and for instance, we can get Rwanda to back off. We're Rwanda's closest ally. If we support an end to that conflict and push it, and threaten to cut aid, we can make that conflict end, and we can look really good in that region, and soft power is exactly what it is. If we don't do that, we may be giving one of the biggest mineral suppliers in the world to Chinese influence, and that's something we need to be thinking of.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian, it is always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Joe.
It really is. Brian Endless.
Can I do a quick plug for website? ComeTogetherProject.squarespace.com. Get more information, and we're all over social media, TikTok, Facebook, other places.
Oh, I'm new to TikTok. I'll look you up there.
Fantastic. I have been a content provider for a year and 3 months now, every single day, Joan. I've been doing 1-minute videos. I had to teach myself how to do them, and it's insane. The old dog has learned a new trick on this one.
Wow. I'm in awe. I dream of being that proficient. I'll work on it. I will. Dr. Brian Endless is the Director of African Studies at Loyola University Chicago.